Ayato is a Giga Chad who joins a magic academy but pretends to be a weak bum to look for hot chicks. However, when the school's most popular baddies learn that he's actually the strongest swordsman, they all line up to get freaky with him, so he lets them play with his sword. On his first day, Ayato sees a handkerchief fly out of a nearby window, so he jumps up to the room to return it, only to see a girl named Julius changing clothes. Seeing her plots, Ayato's cocktopus prawn shifts into high gear, but Julius loudly tells him to turn around. After she puts her clothes on, Ayato shows her the handkerchief, which suddenly makes her tear up, and she says she is relieved to have it back. Once he hands it over, she thanks him right before charging up a powerful attack, which tickles Ayato's spidey senses. He quickly jumps out of the window before the attack lands, and Julius follows him down, ready to beat him up for peeping on her. As other students gather around to see them fight, Ayato explains that he only transferred here today and had no idea he was jumping into the girls' dorm. So instead of a street brawl, Julius challenges him to an official duel. Ayato argues that he doesn't even have a weapon, so someone from the crowd throws him a sword. With no excuses left, they both draw their swords and Ayato accepts Julius's challenge. Julius then explains that whoever destroys the other's school badge wins, and as soon as the duel starts, she bombards him with heavy fire-based attacks. Ayato struggles to keep up with her and has to play defense, but the crowd is still impressed because not many last that long with Julius. Julius herself admits that Ayato is much stronger than she anticipated, so she lets out a huge fireball to finish him off for good. As Ayato runs towards the fireball, Julius makes it explode, but he takes the hit and jumps on top of Julius. That's when she notices that someone tried to assassinate her with a light arrow, and Ayato moved her out of the way. However, in doing so, he ends up getting hands-on with her jugs, and now everyone in the school thinks he's a diddler. Julius is so embarrassed that she's about to commit war crimes against Ayato. But luckily, the student council president, Claudia, arrives and declares the duel invalid because Ayato isn't an official student of the academy yet. Later, as he accompanies Claudia to her office, she suddenly asks if he'd like to get a closer look at her cookie. But Ayato quickly covers his eyes and proves he's a virgin. Once in the office, she explains that in the city of Asterisk, 6 prestigious academies handpick the best superhumans called Genestella in the world and train them to become stronger. Then, once a year, these academies compete in a battle called festas for supremacy, and Claudia hopes Ayato's addition to their academy can increase their odds of winning. If he provides results, the academy will give him anything he desires. But the only thing Ayato wants is to find out what happened to his sister Haruka, who was once a student of this academy. Claudia reveals that all the data related to Haruka has been corrupted, so she isn't really sure if Haruka even attended the academy. She then tells him about a legendary weapon called Serveresta, which is so powerful that no Genestella has ever tried to use it. Despite that, the system still has a combat report on the weapon from 5 years ago, when Haruka allegedly joined the academy. Ayato wants to check out Serveresta because he thinks his sister might have used it, so Claudia promises to take him to the armory later. She then suddenly hugs him from the back and asks if he'd like to get an early graduation, but the guy skedaddles out of there.
Come on, man.
Afterward, he attends his first class and is told to sit beside Julius, and she's clearly not too thrilled about it. After class, Ayato asks her to let the past go and become his friend, but Julius isn't interested in that and says she just owes him a favor for saving her life. After she storms out, a guy named Yabuki introduces himself as his new roommate and tells Ayato not to mind Julius as she keeps her distance from everyone. Later, Yabuki explains that Julius is actually the crown princess of a country called Lysultania and has a very rare Genestella called Striga. Ayato asks how he knows about it, and Yabuki says he's a member of the newspaper club, so it's his job to know. He also tells him that because of Julia's no-nonsense attitude, she was challenged by many when she first came here, and in no time, she has become the 5th strongest Genestella in the academy. Ayato then returns the sword to Yabuki, saying he knew it was him who threw it from the crowd during the duel because he recognized his voice. Just then, they spot a guy hassling Julius for a duel, but she turns him down, saying she's already beaten him 3 times. Ayato asks Yabuki who this fool is, and he says his name is Lester, the academy's current rank 9, who can't stomach being humiliated by daddy's princess. Julius has no interest in wasting time on him and begins walking away, but he grabs her hand, causing her precious handkerchief to fall. Julius' expression suddenly changes, and after picking it back up, she demonstrates her true power, and her aura is so strong that even Ayato is shocked. He goes into a flashback of when he beat up some boys because they were harassing Haruka. However, she told him that he has tremendous power inside of him that can hurt him and the ones around him, which is why he must refrain from fighting others. Ayato asked when he could learn to control this power, and Haruka said only when he finds true purpose in life. He asked her if she's found her purpose, and Haruka embraced him, saying her goal is to protect him because he's the most important person in the world to her. Hearing that, Ayato decided that his purpose would be to protect his sister. At present, he decides to intervene in the duel to protect Lester, and the guy leaves, vowing to make Julius acknowledge him. Ayato then asks Julius why she's here despite being a princess, and she admits she's doing it for money. She adds that she will win the Phoenix Festa and make dollars, but Yabuki reminds her that she needs a partner for it. And given the fact that she's a loner with no friends like Annie and their viewers, things aren't exactly tilting in her favor. After Yabuki leaves to attend a call, Ayato asks Julius if she could guide him to the boys' dorm, which makes him laugh, because this idiot really doesn't know the campus. Ayato is surprised that someone as cold as her could laugh, which makes her self-conscious. While she's yapping, Ayato calmly asks her to give her a tour of the academy, because she owes him a favor for saving her life. Julius suddenly starts to blush and promises to show him around after class tomorrow. The next day, Ayato enters the class and says hi to Julius, and when she replies, the whole class is shocked, as this is the first time she's greeted anyone. The reaction upsets Julius, and she tells everyone to keep their mouths zipped, which makes Ayato chuckle. He then notices a blue-haired sleephead sitting beside him and recognizes her as his old friend Saya. He is shocked because he hasn't seen her in 6 years since she moved abroad. Saya keeps her stoic face up and doesn't give much of a reaction. And when Ayato asks her about her dad, she says he's still making weapons. She adds that she came to this school solely to test out a new gun he invented, and Yabuki starts adding it to his notes for the newspaper club. Just then, the teacher enters the class and asks Saya why she was absent yesterday, and Saya casually says she overslept. The teacher punches her in the head and calls her an idiot before telling her to take a makeup class on the weekend. After class, Julius heads to the bathroom to fix her hair and then returns to the class to ask Ayato if he's ready. Saya asks what this is about, and when he says she's showing her around campus, Saya gets competitive and says she will do that instead because Julius clearly isn't interested. This sparks an argument between the girls, and Julius says she's clearly a better pick because she's been here longer than Saya. Just then, Claudia latches onto Ayato's arm and says she's been here the longest, so by that logic, she is the best tour guide for him. When both Saya and Julius tell her no, she pretends to be heartbroken by it, but then reveals she only came here to inform Ayato that his weapon compatibility test will be conducted tomorrow. Ayato then asks Julius if she is friends with Claudia, but Julius sternly says no. After getting Ayato's signature on the documents, Claudia leaves the room, and the guy asks both Saya and Julius to take him on the tour. They both agree, and Julius takes him around campus, showing him all the important buildings to Ayato. Later, as he leaves to get drinks, Saya asks Julius how he knows Ayato, and she says she had a duel with him on his first day. Saya refuses to believe her, saying that she wouldn't have lived to tell the tale if she had actually fought Ayato. Julius challenges her to a duel to show how strong she really is, but they are interrupted by another assassination attempt on Julius. Julius tries to take out the assassin using her fireball, but when her attack is deflected, Saya pulls out a grenade launcher and tells them to parry this filthy casuals. After she explodes the whole fountain, she asks Julius if she still wants to duel, but Julius suggests they call it a draw. Just then, Ayato comes running in to check up on them and immediately gets flustered when he sees Julius's plots, courtesy of the broken fountain. Julius asks Saya to cover herself up as well, but Saya casually says her melons aren't big enough to make a difference. The next day, as Ayato accompanies Claudia to the weapons room, he asks if they have found the assassins, but she says they've had no luck. Ayato recalls Julius refusing to have guards or even conduct an investigation, making him wonder if she knows who's after her. As they reach the waiting room, Ayato runs into Lester, and Claudia explains that he's come here to apply for a new weapon as well. Lester takes the first turn, and Claudia explains that the user needs to have over 80% compatibility with the weapon to rent it out. Lester ends up choosing Servaresta, and as soon as he pulls it out, Ayato gets a strange feeling in his heart, as if he's being chained up. Lester tries his best with the weapon, but fails to pass the test, so the weapon starts beating him up as if it has a mind of its own. Servaresta then points itself at Ayato, inviting him to step into the zone and try his luck. As soon as Ayato steps in, Servaresta starts attacking it, but by focusing his mind, Ayato manages to take down the beast. His compatibility score goes up to 97%, and he is allowed to rent the weapon. Afterward, Claudia tends to his wounds and tells him to visit her room because she has something important to share. That night, Ayato sneaks into her room through the balcony and Claudia greets him in nothing but a robe, making him wonder if he's getting his sword polished tonight. After getting seated, Ayato notices that she has a spacious apartment, and she tells him it's one of the perks of being a top-ranked Genestella. She then gets down to business, showing Ayato a list of all the students who will participate in the upcoming Phoenix Festa. However, almost all of them have been mysteriously injured just weeks before the tournament, and Claudia believes someone is intentionally hurting them. They don't have any proof now, but Lester and his buddy Randy are being suspected of the crime. Claudia says Julius is for certain the next target, so she asks Ayato to watch over her for the time being. Ayato nervously asks why him, and Claudia explains that he's the closest one to her in the whole academy. Ayato then asks why she's so invested in Julius, and even though Claudia says she's performing her duties as a student council president, Ayato knows she's hiding something. She then slowly walks up to Ayato and tells him that for his reward, he can explore her chamber of secrets until she walks with a limp. But Ayato, being a certified virgin, gets cold feet and jumps out of the balcony. The next day, Ayato meets Julius outside the academy, and seeing her bussin' that cute girl outfit makes his jaw drop. He tells her she looks good, which makes Julius flustered. She then shows him around the city, taking him to the biggest battle arena in Asterisk. She also tells him about the medium-sized arenas that are dedicated to duels, but people don't use them and often duel on the streets. While going around the city, Julius comes across a low-budget McDonald's and suggests they grab lunch from there. While she chugs in on that Big Mac, Ayato questions if she's really a princess, because royalties don't go to burger joints. Julius says she learned about this place from her friends back home, and Ayato is surprised a Kieran like her even has them. He then tells him that Claudia has asked him to be her guard, but Julius sternly refuses, saying she won't hide like cowards and choose her own path. Just then, Lester shows up with his low-life idiots and demands another duel from Julius, but she says no. When he gets angry, Ayato calmly tells him to stop embarrassing himself, adding that dueling Julius right now will put him on the suspect list of the people trying to assassinate her. This ticks off Lester even more, and even though he's ready to fight, his lackeys tell him it's best to settle it later. After the trio leaves, Julius subtly appreciates him standing up for her by wiping ketchup from his face. As they walk back, he thanks her for today, and Julius says she was only repaying her debt properly because they had tagged along the other day. Just then, they see a group of students arguing nearby, and Julius says they're from the Wolf Black Institute. She quickly realizes that it is a setup to cause chaos, and use the distraction to go after her. Ayato asks if they're the ones after her, but Julius believes they were simply paid by the real culprit. She then proceeds to beat all of them up and asks a guy with a tomahawk hair who paid them. The guy points at the guy hiding in the woods, so Julius starts chasing him without a second thought. It turns out to be another ambush, and Ayato Naruto runs after her, but the shooter aims at him just at the last second. Luckily, he manages to block the attack with his sword, and the assassins use the chaos to escape. Julius scolds him for being careless, as if she didn't run into an ambush herself like a moron, and then tells him to meet her later. At night, Ayato climbs through her balcony, and Julius tells him to take off his jacket with a straight face. Ayato thinks she's ovulating and starts to panic. Once Julius realizes what he's thinking, she gets embarrassed and explains that she merely wanted to sew his jacket because it was damaged earlier. While she's at it, Ayato looks around the place and finds a picture of her along with several other orphan kids. She explains that back in the day, she would often sneak out of the palace to explore the city, but one of those days, she got lost in the slums when some thugs tried to kidnap her. A bunch of kids showed up and rescued her. After returning to the palace, she learned that the kids were from the orphanage, so the next time she snuck out, she went there and became friends with them. She never told the kids she was a princess, but the nuns already knew and decided to keep it hidden. She also learned that the orphanage was built with the funds raised by Julius's late mother, but the money was running dry, so she came here to make some money, hoping that she could keep the orphanage running. Ayato questions why she didn't ask the king, but she says he's a puppet of the rich folks, and those guys would never approve a project if it didn't make them money. She mentions how this city puts people in a pit and makes them fight, which is sick and rotten to the core, but if that allows him to help the orphans, she is willing to get her hands dirty. After seeing her resolve and hearing her motives, Ayato has a newfound understanding and respect for Julius. After she returns his jacket, she explains that this handkerchief was a gift from her friends at the orphanage, which is why she holds it so dear. The next day, Ayato enters the class to find Julius holding a letter, asking him to come to the construction site after class. In the evening, Ayato wonders where she went, and Claudia hints that she might be going after her assassin. He gets sad, wondering why she didn't tell him, and Claudia explains it's because she wanted to protect him. Ayato remembers that his sister wanted to protect him too, and he promised to protect her back, so he finally understands what his real purpose is. He immediately rushes out to find her, and Claudia hands her the serveresta to aid his mission. Ayato then dramatically jumps off the building, declaring that his purpose in life is to protect Julius. Meanwhile, Julius reaches the rendezvous spot, and she's immediately ambushed by fallen concrete, but she manages to thwart the first hurdle. She then asks the assassin to show himself, and it turns out to be Lester's friend Silas. Julius says she already knew it was him because yesterday in the city, he said to Lester that he isn't the one to attack anyone while they are in the middle of their duel. Since the media never reported that Julius was dueling Saya at that time, the only way Silas knows is if he was there when the attack happened. Silas is impressed at how aware she is and realizes that Ayato purposely provoked Lester yesterday to rule him out of the suspect list. Julius says that Ayato is much smarter than he looks, and he should watch out for him. And Silas says he's already put him in his target. He also knows that the whole reason Julius came here is to talk it through. So Silas leaves Ayato out of this. He agrees to do so if she withdraws from the Phoenix Festa, but Julius instead wants to slice him up like a hot dog to solve the issue at its core. Just then, Lester shows up on the scene because Silas told him Julius has agreed to a duel. But now he knows that he was the one who attacked her. Julius explains that Silas has been hired by another academy to take out their strong students enrolled in the Festa. Lester asks him how he can attack his fellow students, but Silas says he considers everyone in Asterisk an enemy. Lester asks why he brought him here, and Silas says he needs someone to pin the blame on, and he's the perfect scapegoat. Lester immediately pulls out his Lux weapon and attacks Silas, but a hooded man blocks it using his bare hands. Silas then brings forth more of these hooded figures, and once they take them off, they reveal themselves to be puppets controlled by him. Lester launches another powerful attack and sends them flying, but the puppets recover immediately and bombard him with bullets. Despite taking some hard hits, Lester gets back on his feet and claims he can take 100 of these puppets at once. Being the good friend that he is, Silas actually fulfills his request and brings out all 128 of his puppets. As the puppets march, Lester quickly goes down, and Julius asks Silas to stop this madness. She launches a powerful attack to take some of them out, but the numbers are just too great for her to handle alone. Eventually, she gets shot in the leg, which allows the puppets to pin her against the wall. That's when she realizes that only one institute specializes in creating armors, and Silas must be working for Alicant. In saying so, she just put herself at a greater risk. So Silas tells him to say her prayers because she isn't leaving this place alive. He then commands the biggest puppet to chop her up, but just at the last second, Ayano shows up and moves her out of the way. As he moves her to the upper floor, Julius asks why he's here, and he says he came to rescue her so she could let him hit it later. Julius scolds him for putting himself at risk just to get some plot, but Ayato says that since she is always focused on protecting the kids at the orphanage, she needs someone to protect her as well. He then starts yapping about how he had no purpose in life before, but after meeting her, he's finally realized what he wants to do with his useless and miserable life. When she asks what his purpose is, he says that it is to be there for her, which makes Julius blush. Just then, the moment is ruined when Silas joins them and tells Ayato to face all of his puppets at once as a punishment for interfering in his work. Ayato quickly carries Julius up and recites a spell that makes him glow and produces several magic shields around him, protecting him and Julius from the bullets fired by the puppets. He then slices several puppets at once in a flash and teleports behind Silas. Julius is surprised by his power at first, but then tells him to stop aura farming and finish this fight quickly. As a last resort, Silas pulls out the big guns and starts controlling the puppets directly. But Ayato quickly realizes that he can only puppeteer 16 of them at once. With his weakness exposed, Silas becomes reckless, which allows Ayato to take more of them down. Silas is shocked to see that Serverestet easily pierces through the armor and realizes he needs to pull out one last hurrah. He brings forth a giant puppet called the Queen, but Ayato demonstrates a glimpse of his true power and chops it up with ease. As Silas makes an escape, Ayato tells Julius to stay put while he goes after him. Since he cannot fly on his own, Julius stays with him and uses her powers to lift him into the air. Once up there, Ayato attacks him directly with his Lux weapon, causing him to fall flat on his face. However, he lives because he is a Genestella, while Ayato and Julius stay up there to take in the view. Just then, Ayato feels immense pain in his body, and some magical chains form around him, which confuses Julius. As the guy passes out, he remembers his sister putting a binding spell on him that would stop him from using his full strength. She told him she was doing it to protect him, and as they embraced, that was the last time Ayato saw her. Later, Ayato wakes up in Julius's lap, and she tells him to stay put because Claudia is on her way. He thanks her for everything, but Julius says she should be the one thanking him because he saved her life. Once he realizes he's in her lap, he tries to get up, but she forces him back down and tells him to stay put. She then asks him if he knows the person who put shackles on him, and he tells her it was his sister. He can only go full throttle for a very short time, and this is the first time he's gone over 5 minutes. She wonders why his sister would do such a thing, and Ayato says he wants to ask her too, but she's gone missing. He then asks her if she let him become her partner at the Phoenix Festa, but she says she doesn't want him ending up like this after every fight. Ayato says it's not half bad as he gets to sleep in her lap and says he won't back down from protecting her. Julius gets embarrassed and pushes his face away. but through her tough exterior, she agrees to team up with him. In the meantime, Silas is limping through a dark alley when Claudia shows up looking like a final boss and puts him down for good. Just then, she notices Yabuki standing in the corner, and Claudia tells him not to worry as Silas is still alive. Yabuki wears a smirk as he realizes that Claudia wants to handle it undercover so she can put Alicant in her debt. Unbeknownst to them, Camilla and Ernesta of the Alicant Academy are spying on them through a camera, and Ernesta is pleased because her puppets produced amazing results. The next day, at the Rica Academy Council Hall, student council presidents of the 6 academies, including Drick, Shuma, Fan, and Ernest, are waiting for Claudia. Once she arrives, Ernest suggests they start a meeting, even though there is one president who is on her European tour. Dirk is not so happy about her missing out on important meetings and calls her a hoe, causing Ernest to pull out his Lux like a mega sim. When Dirk challenges him to a duel, Ernest demonstrates that the sword is a dummy, which annoys Dirk. After the foreplay, Dirk asks Claudia if she is colluding with Alicant to co-develop a new type of Lux, and she agrees to it. The other presidents are confused because Alicant is highly advanced, and they cannot benefit from teaming up with Saidoken. They ask Alicant's president, Shuma, if he knows anything, and he says all he did was put a stamp of approval. Claudia clarifies that this is not some secret, shady deal under the table, but rather an official agreement that will become public soon. Dirk asks how it is fair, and Claudia says Saidoken will cover 70% of the developmental cost in exchange for using Alicant's technology. Fan and Dirk believe she is blackmailing Alicant with something, but Claudia puts on her smiling face and pretends to be dumb. As they continue the meeting, Shuma asks them what they think about using artificial intelligence in Asterisk and Festas. Elsewhere, Ayato is running late for his meeting with Julius and is running through the halls when he runs into a girl named Kieran. As they bump into each other, Ayato notices that she's packing some juicy melons, so he apologizes for the mishap and helps her get back up. She gets extremely nervous around him and starts blushing, but before they can talk any further, an older man tells Kieran to hurry up. After she leaves, Ayato joins Julius in the training facility, and the two duel each other to test their strength. Julius seems to have the upper hand at first, but Ayato pulls a trick at the last second and beats her under 3 minutes. Afterward, they discuss how Ayato can fight at full strength for 3 minutes without any side effects, and that's all the time Julius needs to handle the rest on her own. Ayato mentions that not many students are stronger than she is, but Julius tells him he underestimates the others. She mentions Ernest, who's a god with a sword, and Fan, who possesses unmatched power, though she's not allowed to compete in the festas yet. Ayato and mentions a girl who won 2 festas in a row, and Julius says her name is Opelia. Julius definitely has a history with this girl, but she quickly changes topics and says they have the surprise element because people don't know what Cerberesta can do, which is why they should use it in a reserved manner. Just then, they are joined by Lester and Saya immediately picks a fight with Julius for having Ayato all to herself. Lester, despite having a tough exterior, admits that he was getting beaten up by Silas and thanks Ayato for saving him. Just then, Claudia enters the room with Camilla and Ernesta and explains that Saidoken has teamed up with Alicant to create a new Lux, and these ladies are here to sign the contract. Julius quickly realizes that Claudia has monopolized the Silas incident to her advantage and asks for the real reason why Camilla and Ernesta are here. Ernesta eagerly reveals that she came here to see the man who defeated her puppets, and after telling him that it won't be so easy next time, she kisses him on the cheek, which shocks Julius and Saya. They both immediately pull out their Lux, and Camilla is intrigued to see the weapon Saya is holding. She says she specializes in such weapons, and the technique used to make this one is impractical. She then realizes Saya might be Dr. Suichi's daughter, the man who was kicked out of Alicant due to his questionable methods. Claudia quickly steps in and suggests they get down to business, but there is a clear tension between Camilla and Saya. Before leaving, Ernestra tells them that they will take part in the Phoenix Festa, so Saya decides to take revenge on Camilla for insulting her father. He tells Ayato to team up with her, but Julius quickly reminds her that he's already taken. As they begin arguing, Camilla and Ernesta are outside. The latter says she will go to every lengths to make her dream come true. The next day, while Ayato and Yabuki walk through the halls, they notice a man disciplining Kieran through violent means. Ayato quickly steps in and stops him, so the man introduces himself as Kieran's uncle, Koichiro, and tells him to stay out of their family affairs. When Ayato refuses to back down, the man promises never to hit Kieran again on the condition that he beats her in a duel. Hesitant at first, Kieran is forced to comply with his uncle's order and activates the duel. As the two are fighting, a crowd gathers around them, and both Julius and Yabuki are a part of it. Despite their ultra-fast movements, Yabuki is able to commentate on the fight easily, which surprises Julius. As the fight continues, Ayato realizes he is closing in on his limit and if he goes any further, everyone will know about his weakness. He decides to take Kieran out with one big attack, but Kieran notices that he's rushing and uses the gap to slice his badge. After she leaves, Julius quickly joins him and asks why he would battle Kieran, as she is the rank 1 Genestella of their academy. Koichiro then scolds Kieran for taking too long against Ayato, telling her that a good-for-nothing loser like her only became rank 1 because of him. He further tells her to keep following his orders if she wants to achieve his dream, and Kieran says yes with a pain in her voice. Meanwhile, Ayato is resting after using his powers when Julius comes in and throws a towel in his face, and he thinks she's upset because he promised to keep his powers hidden. In reality, Julius is upset at how Koichiro treats Kieran and says that if Ayato hadn't stepped up, she would have been disappointed in him. When Ayato thanks her for understanding, she gets flustered and says she is also mad at him for losing to Kieran because she thought that if anyone could beat her, it would be him. When Julius says Kieran is a first-year student, Ayato is shocked because he had seen her jugs and thought she was a senior. Julius then pulls out the rank chart, explaining that the only 3 people she can't beat on campus are him, Claudia, and Kieran. Claudia is ranked 2 at the academy, and she's also known as Parca Morta because her Lux Pandora allows her to see the future. Rumor has it she can see up to 10 seconds ahead. Because of that, she has never been defeated in battle. The only difference between her and Kieran is that Kieran does not wield a Lux, and she is not even a Strida, which is a rare breed of Genestella. It is absurd that she's managed to defend her number 1 rank with merely a katana, and since Ayato has just lost to her, Julius needs to rethink her entire strategy for the festa. However, before they can strategize, Ayato needs a new badge because he lost his previous one against Kieran. On his way, he runs into Claudia, looking like a full-course meal, and gets flustered. He tries his best to fight the final boss in his pants and explains that he came here to get a new badge. Claudia immediately hands him the new badge, making the guy wonder if she was hiding it in her Beverly Hills. As they get to talking, Claudia says he never expected him to fight Kieran, and Ayato says it happened because of her uncle Koichiro. She explains that Koichiro works at the company named Galaxy that sponsors Saidoken, which is why he has authority on campus. However, Koichiro wants a spot at the highest table, so he is basically using Kieran's talents to win a favor with the board. Ayato asks if Kieran is forced to fight, but Claudia says she has her own goals as well. Even then, she believes Koichiro will never make it to the top because only those who partake in a psychological adjustment program to erase their desires are allowed up there. When Ayato asks how she knows so much about it, Claudia says her mother is a member of the board. Later, as Ayato is returning to the dorms, she learns that Kieran has come to see him. He takes her to the reception, where Kieran thanks him for protecting her from Koichiro. Even though they had to duel in the end, the gesture made her really happy, and she wanted to share it with him. Ayato suddenly gets up and pats her head, but before she can say anything, he opens the door, and every boy in the dorm comes falling out. To have some privacy, Ayato takes Kieran on a walk, but she's nervous because she's never done this with anyone other than her family. Ayato already knows how strict her family is, and he even knows their sword fighting style, which resembles a folding crane. Kieran gets excited and starts yapping about everything she learned about Ayato's fighting style during their last battle, but she suddenly gets self-conscious and decides to shut up. Ayato comments that she's really into sword fighting, and Kieran says it's because that's the only thing she is good at. She believes she can be useful as long as she holds a sword. So Ayato asks what she is fighting for. She says it's to save her father, and she is obedient to her uncle because he's shown her the quickest way to achieve her goal. Ayato believes he's just using her, but she calmly says that she's just giving him compensation in return for helping her. She then tells Ayato that she wants to spar with him. So Ayato invites her to his training sessions with Julius. However, when she hears Julius's name, her mood shifts, and she says she is told to keep her distance from the top-ranked students. So instead, Ayato invites her to his early morning training session, where he can practice his sword strokes on her. After some consideration, Kieran takes him up on his offer, after which he drops her off at the girls' dorm. Just then, Saya jumps out of a tree and puts him in a submission, demanding to know who he was with. When he struggles to breathe, she lets him go and asks if he has thought about becoming her tag partner in the Phoenix Festa. Ayato calmly tells her that he has already teamed up with Julius, and he can't go back on his word. Understanding his position, she goes back to her other question, and Ayato says that the girl was a first-year student Kieran. Saya feels jealous because Kieran developed those peaches so early on, while she's still stuck looking like a flatbread. Ayato tries to comfort her, saying that just like her, Kieran is also here to help her father. Some days later, Julius meets Ayato at the cafeteria, and he ends up inviting her for lunch. However, she says she wants to know what he's doing with Kieran, and in her anger, she accidentally orders spicy curry for herself. As they eat, Ayato explains that he and Kieran have started training in the mornings, so Jules pretends not to care even though she's clearly possessive of him. When she struggles to eat her spicy curry, Ayato asks if she wants to exchange with him, but she keeps up a strong front and says no. Ayato tells her she needs to open up to him more since they are partners now, and she knows he's right, so she agrees to trade plates with him. The next day, while Ernesta is sleeping in her surveillance room, Camilla wakes her up and tells her it's time to spy on their favorite boy. They see Ayato jogging with Kieran and decide to test out their newly made weapons against them. Ayato and Kieran notice that the fog around them is getting thicker, and when Ayato says they might get separated, Kieran suddenly holds his hand, making the guy shift into high-performance gear. Just then, they notice a strange presence in the bushes, and soon after, some mini dinosaurs ambush them. Ayato uses his lux to take them down, but no matter how much he tries, they keep regenerating their bodies. Kieran then tries to slice them up, and before they can regenerate, she continues attacking them until she destroys a small core at their center, which ends up game-ending the dinosaur. Before they can inspect the core, more dinos attack them, and Ayato almost falls into a pit. Kieran manages to grab his hand at the last second, but instead of pulling him back up, she ends up falling down with him. Ernesta watches this from her surveillance room and is let down by the results, so she decides to activate Phase 2 of her plan. Meanwhile, Ayato and Kieran drop into a pool of water, and Kieran doesn't know how to swim and clings to him, which makes them a little flustered. Just then, they are attacked by a large dragon, so Ayato quickly taps into his power to fight it. However, fighting underwater proves to be difficult for him, so Kieran begs him to pump and dump her, because she already has trauma from a memory. Ayato assures her that she is not a burden and asks her to have little faith in him because she knows how strong he is. After she's calmed down, Ayato carves an opening into the pillar to give Kieran a place to stand on, and then turns his attention towards the dragon. He asks Kieran to spot its core, and she reveals it is constantly moving inside the dragon. For the first time ever, Ayato decides to use his lux to full capacity and slices the dragon in half, destroying its core in the process. However, he immediately starts feeling the effects of using his power for so long and collapses into Kieran's arms. Later, as they put their clothes to dry, Ayato sits back to back with Kieran and explains that he can only fight for up to 5 minutes using his full strength. Kieran questions why he'd hurt himself and fight, and Ayato says he's doing it to protect someone. Kieran guesses that he's talking about Jules and says it makes sense since he's been sneaking into her dorm to taste her cookie every night. However, Ayato quickly tells her that he's not dating Jules, causing Kieran to scoot closer to him and whisper that there's still a chance for her. When Ayato asks what she meant, she starts to panic and tries to change the topic. Ayato then asks why she's here, and she says she wants to save her father, who is being detained on false charges. 5 years ago, she and her father were in a shop when someone broke in and took her hostage. In order to save her, Kieran's father ended up yeeting the man out of existence, and even though it was self-defense, he was put behind bars because he was a Genestella. In hindsight, Kieran believes she could have defeated the kidnapper on her own even back then, but she froze, and her father had to take drastic measures. Now, she's at the mercy of her uncle, who orders her around, and she follows because she has no other choice. However, Ayato believes she must have another option that she hasn't considered yet and tells her that he'll support her if she chooses a new path for herself. Touched by his words, Kieran turns around to thank him, but Ayato takes one good look at the whole package and gets flustered. After they turn back to back again, Kieran says he reminds her of her father, but since she already has one, she wants to make him her daddy instead. Just then, the rescue team arrives at the scene, and they are pulled out of the pit. Kieran apologizes to Koichiro for making him worry, but the guy boldly says that he is only interested in her powers and nothing else. He then tells her that Ayato was involved in some shady business with Alicant, so Kieran is not allowed to see him anymore. However, Kieran refuses and says she has a lot to learn from Ayato, and spending more time with him is invaluable to her. Koichiro furiously slaps her across the face, but Kieran stands firm, prompting the guy to go on a rant. He then tries to throw hands at her, but she grabs his fist and thanks him for everything he has done for her so far. But from this moment on, she has decided to take her own path, and she'll start by dueling the opponent of her choice. Later, she meets Ayato at the mid-sized arena for their duel and tells him that she's finally detached herself from Koichiro. Ayato agrees to duel with her, but he decides to use a normal lux because Sir Veresta slows him down. As they prepare for the duel, Jules and the rest of his friends watch from the stands. Jules is a little worried about Ayato, but Saya tells him Ayato has fought someone way stronger than Kieran, who is his older sister, Haruka. She also learns that Ayato borrowed a lux from both Lester and Yabuki, making them all wonder what he's cooking. The duel starts, and as expected, Kieran is lightning fast with her katana. However, Ayato manages to keep up with her and surprises her by pulling out a spear and then a short sword. By switching weapons quickly, he overwhelms Kieran and uses a grappling move in the end to slam her down. Kieran is delighted to have finally met her match, and as her badge breaks, the two shake hands out of mutual respect. Afterward, Ayato is with Julius and Saya when Claudia brings Kieran in, and she nervously asks if they would let her join their afternoon training sessions. Julius learns that Ayato invited her earlier too, and Ayato explains that their practice would become more efficient by having someone like Kieran on board. Saya interrupts and agrees to it, but Julius says it's not her decision and that she has been joining their sessions without permission too. Ayato is about to officially invite Kieran to the practice, but just then, Koichiro starts banging on the door. After they let him in, he starts scolding Kieran for losing and tells her to come with him. When Kieran refuses, he starts to get violent, but Ayato steps in and tells Koichiro to skedaddle. Koichiro is enraged and threatens to testify against Kieran's father if she doesn't come with him. But Claudia reminds him that her mother is a member of the board, and if Koichiro does anything to tarnish the reputation of their school's rank 1 Genestella, he will regret it later. Realizing he's lost, Koichiro starts to walk away, and Kieran uses this chance to thank him again for everything. He leaves the room without even acknowledging her, and Ayato gives Kieran a head pat to make her feel better. After Ayato invites her to the training, Kieran asks if they could be friends from now on, and he says yes. Meanwhile, Ernesta has studied the combat report and has developed new puppets that are much stronger than the ones Ayato faced earlier. With them, she hopes to turn the tide and win the Phoenix Festa. On the other hand, while Kieran is in the changing room, Saya approaches her and says she has a proposal for her. Since they are both fighting for their respective fathers, Saya suggests they team up for the Festa. Soon after, Saya and Kieran are in the practice arena, combining their different combat styles to clear the drill. However, their synergy is not there yet, and they're scoring much lower than Ayato and Julius. Later, while they're having lunch, a girl approaches Ayato and asks him for an autograph, which makes Julius, Saya, and Kieran jealous. Julius mockingly says it must be tiring being a celebrity, but Yabuki reminds her that Ayato went from being an unknown student to rank 1 in just one duel, so, naturally, he has some fans. He also adds that Julius was also very famous when she became rank 5, but the hype died quickly because she's always mean to everyone. In her defense, Julius shows Ayato that the girls are selling his autographs online, and that's exactly why she never cashed in her fame. Amid all the fake fans, Saya and Kieran say they really admire him. But if they were to fight him in the Festa, they would not hold back. Ayato is shocked that Saya teamed up with Kieran, and Saya says she would go to any length to teach Camilla a lesson because she insulted her father. Ayato believes Kieran and Saya will be a phenomenal team because their technique is fine, and they just need to have more synergy. Saya finally understands what's missing and tells Ayato that she and Kieran will not be joining them for training tomorrow because they're gonna spend the day socializing. The next day, they're both sitting on a park bench, and Saya admits she has no idea what she's doing. She adds that she's never socialized with anyone before and asks Kieran to teach her. Kieran nervously admits that she's in the same boat as her, so Saya suggests they partake in an activity together to strengthen their bond. She wants to go shopping, but since she's bad with directions, she wants Kieran to tag along and guide her. At the shopping district, Saya says she wants to buy a present for her father for his upcoming birthday, but then she realizes how that would make Kieran sad and apologizes. Kieran tells her it's okay and shows her around the place, but in the end, they fail to find a suitable gift for him. As they return to the park, Kieran asks Saya what kind of person he is, and she says he's a mad scientist. Saya then shows him a spot on the map and asks if Kieran could get her there, and she agrees. They take the train and arrive at a shady neighborhood, where they find an illegal Lux shop. Heading inside, Saya looks around for weapons until she finds one that she likes. After buying it, she tells Kieran that this gun is a rare find, and it has a generator that can help her father's research. As they exit the alley, Saya says she's done what she wanted to do, so now Kieran should decide where they go next. Hesitant at first, Kieran reveals she doesn't know how to swim, so she asks Saya to accompany her to the pool and teach her. Saya asks her why she wants to learn how to swim, and Kieran hints that she's doing it to make Ayato proud. Afterward, as Saya leaves to buy drinks, Kieran practices on her own in the pool, but ends up swimming into another girl. The girl is a hot-headed freak who starts yapping and threatens to beat Kieran up, but when she realizes that Kieran is the former rank 1 of Sedoken, she admits to overreacting. Kieran apologizes and explains that she's learning how to swim, so she couldn't control herself. The girl starts laughing at her because she thinks Kieran is joking, but just then, Saya shows up and hurls a bottle in her face for making fun of her partner. After some back and forth between the two, the girl introduces herself as Violet, ranked 35th at the Queenvale Academy, and challenges Saya to a duel. As the battle begins, Violet continues yapping and starts powering up, but Saya gets tired and pulls out a bazooka, ending the duel in a single strike. Afterward, as Saya watches the sunset with Kieran. She advises her to stand up for herself, but Kieran says she's so used to her uncle bullying her that she thinks it's normal now. Saya tells her she must not let anyone treat her badly because she's a great person with a lot of good qualities, and her words make Kieran tear up. Kieran then asks why she chose her as a tag partner, and Saya says that apart from her obvious skill, it was her determination that pulled her in. The two then decide to become friends rather than just partners, and the next day, their results in the training show their strengthened bond. Julius and Ayato are proud of them, because in a single day, they not only became good friends but also topped the previous high score. Meanwhile, Dirk, who is the student council president of Rolf Black Institute, accompanies his secretary, Corona, to the prison-like discipline rooms. There, he meets a baddie named Irene and asks her for a favor. He shows her Ayato's profile and tells her that all she needs to do is beat this guy up because he's the wielder of Serveresta. Irene agrees to the mission, but strictly warns Dirk that if anything happens to her sister, she will pop him like a balloon. Irene is then free from her shackles and decides to grab a snack first. Meanwhile, at the opening ceremony of the Phoenix Festa, the chairman, Mesa, gives a speech. While he welcomes everyone to the event, he suddenly looks at Ayato with a smirk, and even though Ayato is shocked, he assumes it must be a coincidence. Mesa then explains that prior to this year, there were some restrictions regarding the type of lux one could use in the Festa, but now that some institutes have developed mechs, such restrictions would actually decline the popularity of these tournaments. So for this Festa, he wants to experiment by allowing contestants to substitute themselves with their mechs. Afterwards, Ayato and Julius are backstage, and since their match is later, they decide to grab lunch. Just then, Ayato spots Lester with his buddy Randy and invites them to lunch, but Lester tells him to stop acting like they're friends. Ayato politely says he just wants to thank him properly for lending him his lux, but Lester still says no and adds that he's looking forward to seeing him in battle before leaving. Afterwards, Saya suddenly hugs Ayato from the side and Kieran soon joins them, explaining that she made lunch for everyone. Kieran says she learned a lot from Saya, and Julius is a little jealous knowing that Saya is basically already a housewife. Kieran is nervous about how it'll turn out, so Ayato pats her head, and Saya asks him to pat her head too because she also made lunch. Julius is clearly jealous and tells them to come to the waiting room so she can hide her embarrassment. After finishing the rice balls, Ayato tunes into the broadcast and watches G and Miko commentate on the whole thing. They explain that the tournament has 256 pairs as of now, and after the prelims are done, they will be cut down to the top 32. Another raffle will determine the matchups for the finals, and that will advance them to stage 2 of the tournament. A match ends when both members of a team lose their badge, surrender, or are rendered unconscious. Kieran asks Julius if she has devised a strategy for their first match, and Julius replies that she'll just have to wait and watch. Soon after, Ayato and Julius take the stage, and Ayato is introduced as the only rank 1 student in the entire Festa. Julius, on the other hand, is introduced as a princess with Striga abilities, and the crowd goes wild for her. As the match begins, their opponents both charge down at the same time. Ayato then goes through a fancy transformation that is every animator's nightmare, only for him to defeat both his opponents in a single blow. Heading backstage, Julius is glad they won the match without revealing any of their strategies as a team and advises Ayato not to share anything with the media. Afterward, Julius says that the media is so annoying that it makes the Abluki seem less insufferable, and the guy takes it as a compliment. Ayato then asks him why he's here, and Yampupi says he wants to see Alicant's match closely, especially after Mesa's announcement regarding substitutes. He reveals he went to their waiting room to interview them, but they kicked him out, so he decided to stick around for the match. Soon after, Ernesta's puppets go on stage, and the commentators explain how most of these mechs are controlled externally, and the response time makes them useless against Genestella. However, these ones seem to be autonomous. Just then, they receive info about these mechs from Ernesta, and she reveals that these mechs are named Artie and Rimsey. Their opponent, a top-ranked Evla Wolf, is not so happy about being used as an experiment, but he is shocked when Artie starts roasting him on stage. Artie even says he will give them a 1-minute grace period during which he will not attack, and both the crowd and Ernesta go wild. However, his own teammate Rimsey starts calling him a malfunctioning piece of junk for showing off. However, since Artie has already given his word, Rimiki agrees to back him up and agrees not to attack for a minute. As the match begins, the opponents confidently start attacking them, and as one of them struggles to break Artie's shield, the other continuously misses his shots at Rimsey because of her super speed. After 1 minute passes, both of them collapse from exhaustion, allowing Artie and Rimiki to finish the battle with ease. Ayato is watching from the waiting room, worried about how they will face these monsters. Julius and Saya share the same sentiment, agreeing that they will be in trouble if they fight these monsters. Just then, she gets a call from her dad Suichi, who just wanted to share how excited he was seeing the Alicant puppets in action. After saying hi to Ayato, he tells Saya that he's sending her a new weapon and she should try it in her first match. After the call ends, Saya and Kieran head to the customs to receive the package, and Yabuka goes to sneak into the post-match press conference. That leaves only Ayato and Julius, so they decide to practice for their next match. Meanwhile, Ernesta is over the moon at her victory, and while Rimsey is humble, Artie starts acting cocky until she makes him trip and scolds him for having such a high and mighty attitude in front of their master. Ernesta tells her to let Artie off the hook this once, after which Artie asks Ernesta why Rimsey is so much stronger than him even though they have the same specs. Ernesta tells him it's because she was coded as a bossy housewife, and he was coded as an office worker who eats canned food after a 9 to 5. She then brings them back to the waiting room, telling herself that this weird explanation will have to do for now. Later, Ayato and Julius are rushing back to the arena because she wants to see Kieran and Saya's match, but Ayato tells her to take it easy. Just then, they notice a crowd outside, and it is Irene beating the living daylight out of some street thugs. After finishing them up, she spots Ayato in the crowd, and since he's her target, she goes to say hi to him. Julius steps in and tells her to leave her partner alone, but Irene tells her it doesn't concern her and pulls out her lux. Both Ayato and Julius sense it coming and quickly step back. But before things get too heated, Irene's sister Priscilla comes looking for her. As soon as she sees her, Irene becomes a completely different person, as if she's scared of her. Priscilla then makes her apologize to both Ayato and Julius and drags her out of there. Julius pulls out Priscilla's profile and learns that she's an unranked Genestella who's partnering up with Irene in the festa. Ayato then asks if Julius has any history with Irene, and Julius responds that she was just on guard because Irene was clearly targeting him. She believes the Wolf Institute has put her up to take out the competition, but their conversation comes to a halt when they get a notification regarding Saya's match. Inside the arena, while the commentators introduce Saya and Kieran, Saya is pouting because Ayato still hasn't shown up. Kieran tells her he will be here, so they both draw their weapons to prepare for the duel. Once it starts, Kieran takes one of them on, and after just a few attacks, she manages to slice her opponent's badge in a very clean manner. In contrast, Syed is using her bazooka to parry her opponent's close-range attacks, and after making some distance between her and the guy, she charges up her lux. When the man takes a leap to close the distance, Syed catches him mid-air and blows him up, ending the match in a destructive fashion. Later, while taking a shower, Kieran and Saya discuss the nature of the weapon she carries and how she learned close combat by watching Ayato. As she steps out, Kieran chases after her with a towel, but after seeing her melons, Saya finally understands why men love milkers and wishes to play with them. However, Kieran's close combat skills are way too high, so she dodges all her attempts. Just then, Ayato calls them to apologize for missing their match, and Saya opens the door for them even though they've got no plot armor, causing Kieran to scream. On the 5th day of the festa, Ayato and Julius duel a tag team called Non-Sugar, who are quite popular among the crowd. This time, Julius decides to fight alone, and after just a few seconds, she manages to take down one of her opponents. She then traps the other one in a barrier and throws a ball of fire at her, ending the match in a flashy manner. After another easy win, Ayato and Julius head to the waiting room, where Julius suddenly starts blushing and tells Ayato that she brought him sandwiches. After Ayato tells her they taste amazing, her face suddenly lights up, but she quickly goes back to being mean. She nervously explains that she doesn't like being treated differently, hinting at how he gave head pats to Kieran and Saya earlier. Ayato goes red and starts patting her head, and even though it feels good, she suddenly shakes him off and suggests they watch the other matches. She tunes into the broadcast and sees Lester and Randy going up against Irene and Priscilla. The commentator explains that Irene's gravy scythe has the ability to control gravity, but since it can't target people directly, Lester and Randy are constantly on the move to avoid it. Despite that, Irene suddenly traps Randy in a gravity field, and he's the fatty who struggles to get back up when he falls down. Lester closes in on Irene to free Randy, but she easily thwarts his attempt and eliminates Randy by making him unconscious. As Lester gets back on his feet, his powerful attack blasts Irene away, so out of respect for his power, she decides to go all out. She then walks to Priscilla and tells her she needs some juice, so Priscilla opens her shirt, allowing Irene to suck her blood. Ayato asks Julius what's going on here, and she explains that Priscilla has the ability to regenerate wounds and even her blood. On the other hand, Irene's Lux demands blood in exchange for lending its powers, and it has changed her body to basically a vampire, so it never runs dry. With her power restored, Irene traps Lester in a high-gravity field, and despite putting up a good fight, Lester surrenders in the end. Later, Claudia congratulates Ayato for making it to the finals and reveals she is the one who's drawing lots for his matchup. Before that, she wants Ayato to practice his strokes on her, claiming that she misses him because Julius and the others have hogged him. Just then, Ayato gets a call from Kieran, who nervously asks for his help. When he asks what's up, she tells him she lost track of Saya while they were out, so Ayato agrees to help her. He then reschedules the pounding session with Claudia and heads straight to the shopping district. That's where he runs into Priscilla, who is being chased by the very men her sister Irene beat up earlier. Ayato quickly drags her out of there, and as they hide atop a building, she thanks him for saving her. Priscilla then reveals these guys are from the casino, and Irene apparently had a fight with them. She asks Ayato not to judge Irene harshly, because even though she's a hot-headed freak, she is kind at heart. She also says that she had contacted Irene for help right before he showed up, and just then, she shows up. Thinking Ayato is trying to swipe her sister's V card, Priscilla quickly explains that Ayato actually saved her, but Irene declares that he's the enemy, and this must be part of his plan. Ayato realizes he left his Lux at home, so Priscilla steps up and tells her to calm down, causing the hue in Irene's eyes to disappear. She immediately goes back to being a normal girl and promises not to hurt Ayato. Irene then asks Ayato why he was strolling around in the city to begin with, and right on cue, Saya calls him to let him know that Kieran has found her. The call itself is proof of what Ayato was actually doing, so Irene admits her mistake, and now she owes him one. Ayato says it's all good, but Irene shows him that they're facing each other in the finals, so this is going to get really awkward. Soon after, an enraged Irene explodes in Dirk's office to make herself a door and immediately slices his desk in half. When Dirk asks if she's on her period again, she says her sister was attacked today, and one of the major conditions of her contract with Dirk is that he ensures Priscilla's safety at all times. Dirk, however, dodges the responsibility by saying some people don't follow his orders, so Irene suggests assigning guards to her. Dirk responds that Priscilla has regenerative abilities, and it's not a big deal if she gets a scratch or two, but Irene finally breaks and swings her weapon at Dirk. The fatso manages to block it, but it still leaves a cut on his cheek, and he realizes Irene is consumed by her Lux. He then tells her that he had already assigned guards to Priscilla, but they couldn't make a move because Ayato butted in. Irene understands that the guards cannot be seen under any circumstances, but she is still frustrated that she owes a favor to Ayato. Because of that, she cannot fight Ayato and tells Dirk to stay out of her business while she fixes it. After she leaves, Dirk asks Corona to do a reading, and she creates a magic circle, using cards to predict the future. The cards tell her that their academy's Rizz sisters will win, after which Dirk asks her to arrange a meeting with the vice chairman. After she leaves, Dirk contacts something called the Seventh Golden Eye. Meanwhile, Ayato informs Julius that he got a dinner invitation from Irene, and she reminds him that they are his next opponents. Ayato is too gullible for his own good, so Julius says she'll have to get used to his idiocy and keep an eye on him. That is why she declares that she will join him for dinner. Later that day, Ayato and Julius visit Irene's apartment, and Priscilla greets them with a smile. She invites them into the living room, where Irene greets them with a cold hi. Julius immediately starts teasing her for being a bad host and says she's come here to make sure Ayato stays a virgin. Irene mockingly asks Julius why she's acting like Ayato's mother. But before things escalate, Priscilla returns with dinner and dissolves the argument. Julius is taken aback by how good a cook she is, and Ayato comments that they've got a fancy apartment. Irene says it's the best because it's closer to the casino, and she really needs to make money. When Julius asks why not make it from the festa, Priscilla strangely leaves the table, and Irene explains that many years ago, she borrowed a lot of money from Dirk. Ever since then, she's been paying him off bit by bit, but the contract she signed back then forbids her from joining the festas on her own. Even if she wins, she cannot use that prize money to pay back the debt, which means Dirk has basically enslaved her for an extended time. She then reveals that Dirk ordered her to destroy Ayato, and the only reason she's sharing this secret is because she owes him for saving Priscilla's life. She tells them she won't start a fight in her house and further explains that Dirk is after Ayato because of Cerveresta, which can be a thorn in his side. Julius asks why Dirk wants to destroy a Lux, and Irene says she doesn't know what goes on that fat head of his. What she does know is that Dirk has seen someone else wield that weapon, and Ayato is surprised because it could very well be his sister. His mind immediately goes back to the conversation he had with Claudia in her office, but he decides to keep it to himself. Irene believes that by sharing this info, she has returned the favor, and they are even now. Just then, Priscilla returns with another dish and asks Irene to slice it up, and seeing their sisterly bond makes him miss Haruka. Later that day, Priscilla sees them off and apologizes for the trouble her sister caused. Julius then tells her to be prepared for tomorrow's match, but Priscilla seems hesitant. Even though she doesn't want to fight, she is doing it to support Irene. who is simply trying to pay off their debt. Jules still thinks giving her blood is way too much, but Priscilla says that's not the issue. The issue is that every time Irene uses the scythe, she becomes a completely different person, and that scares her. On their way back, Ayato tells Jules that he is worried about Irene's well-being, and even though she shares the sentiment, she advises him not to get distracted because they have a big match coming up. After dropping her off, Ayato calls Claudia and asks if they could meet. He then visits her apartment, where all the lights are off, and he finds her whimpering on her desk. When he approaches her, Claudia suddenly wakes up and starts attacking him. Eventually, she has him pinned, but Ayato suddenly places his hand on her cheek, causing her to return to her senses. Once she realizes what she was about to do, she starts sobbing and apologizes. As they get seated, Ayato asks her what happened, but before she answers, she asks him for a favor. She requests that he join the next year's Griffin Festa as a member of her team, and Ayato agrees on the condition that Jules is also invited. Claudia admits she's a little jealous of her, but it's not an issue because she intends to invite her anyway. She then explains that she only shares her secrets with those who are her teammates, and now that they're partners, she can tell him what really happened. She then asks Ayato if he knows what it feels like to die, adding that she has already died over 1,200 times. She explains that her Lux demands the wielder to experience their own death, and every time she falls asleep, she sees it over and over again. The worst part about it is that it shows her a new death every time. So all in all, this Lux is a compilation of the show 1000 Ways to Die. She has experienced death by illness, starvation, self-eating, murder, and everything else. And for that very reason, no one has mastered this Lux to this day. All the previous owners gave up after 3 days, and it is amazing that Claudia has managed to hold it for so long. Ayato asks her why she torments herself every day, and Claudia says she has a secret goal, much like everyone else. Ayato then asks her about Irene's scythe, and she explains that every ogre Lux has a personality of its own. Cerverestat has one of the better personalities, and her own Lux Pandora is the absolute worst. As for the gravy scythe, Claudia gets a feeling that it is quite dangerous, adding that a Lux always has the ability to change its wielder's mind, personality, and even their physical traits to suit themselves. With that info, Ayato decides to call it a night because he has a match tomorrow, but Claudia suggests he practice his sword on her instead. Rejecting her offer, Ayato leaves her apartment, and in the meantime, Irene is consumed by her Lux and goes on a murdering spree against the thugs who tried to kidnap Priscilla. Meanwhile, Priscilla is in her apartment, thinking about the time her country was going through a war, and in the explosions, her house fell on top of her. But luckily, she was saved due to her regenerative abilities. Later, the doctors offered a lot of money to her parents to turn her into an experimental rat, but Irene took her away because she wanted to protect her. While they were living in the slums, Dirk approached them and tossed the scythe to Irene. She managed to wield it successfully, and ever since that day, she has been changing. At present, Priscilla wakes Irene up for their match, and she tells her to just stay in the back while she does all the fighting. However, Irene admits that this will be a tough match, and they need to give it their all. Priscilla then offers her blood to juice her up, and after taking it, the sisters hug it out. Meanwhile, Jules finds Ayato spacing out before the match, but in reality, he was thinking of a plan which he whispers in her ear. Soon after, they walk towards the stage, and Jules says she needs to win this match no matter what, but she is open to doing it his way. After the doors open, both teams come on stage, and Ayato immediately draws his Lux, which excites everyone as they have not seen much of him before. After that, the battle finally begins, and Jules immediately targets Irene with her long-range attacks. Ayato charges her down with his Lux, and for a second, Irene admits that she is getting overwhelmed. She then pulls out her big guns, and when Jules tries to take out Priscilla, Irene quickly joins her and creates a gravity shield to protect her. While she takes more of her juice, Jules tells Ayato that she's ready to try out his secret technique. As they regroup, Ayato asks Irene if what she is doing is really okay, but this ticks her off, and she starts attacking him recklessly. With that opening, Jules and Ayato work together to land a heavy hit on the gravy scythe, but Irene manages to block it. She understands that they are trying to destroy her Lux, and Jules tells Ayato that his 5 minutes are already up, which means they don't have much time. Irene then creates several balls of gravity and sends them all towards Ayato, but he locks in and uses his special Amikiri style to destroy them all. He then immediately charges Irene, allowing Jules to create a whole field of attack that traps her inside. Irene is caught in the explosion, but once the dust settles, they notice that she's used her gravity balls to protect herself. Priscilla is worried for her and rushes into the zone to check up on her, but Irene starts walking towards her with a glow in her eyes. As she sucks more of her blood, the whole battle arena is covered in super strong gravity magic, and Ayato uses the Talk No Jutsu to break her out of her trance. Irene carefully drops an unconscious Priscilla on the ground, and right after, She starts screaming and emits another strong wave of gravity. Amid the chaos, Ayato suddenly gets a familiar feeling from Sir Festa, and he decides to pour everything he has into one big attack. First, he clears the air of Irene's gravity, then he disarms her, and finally, he strikes the gravy side's core, causing it to crumble. After Irene hits the floor, Ayato and Julius are declared the winners, and Ayato himself collapses from exhaustion. Dirk watches this from his screen and notices Ayato suffering after using the Lux, which immediately tells him that Ayato can only use his full strength for a short time. Other important figures also become aware of his weakness, but some of them believe there might be another twist to the story. That evening, Priscilla wakes up in infirmity alongside Irene, who explains she passed out because she ran out of mana. She also explains that they lost the match, and the gravy scythe was also broken, which makes Priscilla laugh. Irene is a little sad because she failed her mission and still has a debt to pay, so Priscilla decides to join her, promising that she will learn how to fight so she can be of more use to her. She even says that she will become stronger than Irene one day, and she takes her word for it. Meanwhile, Julius is in the waiting room, worried that everyone now knows about Ayato's weakness. On top of that, Ayato can't move a muscle, but he reminds her that he promised to always have her back, so he will figure out a way to work around it. He gets up and tells Julius that he needs to find a way to break this seal, so Julius cups his face in her hands and tells her not to fight it alone. She also tells him that she will have his back too, since they are partners, and right before they are about to kiss. The rest of his friends barge into the room and ruin the moment. They all start fighting over who gets to help Ayato recover, while Yabuki is waiting outside the room, wondering how the festa will turn out. Elsewhere, a mysterious man addresses Haruka, telling her that his meddling has delayed his plans. He then picks up her blood-covered glasses from the floor and says, "It's time to begin." That's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and we might make a part 2. If you made it to the end, comment, "One Piece is trash," as proof.